Welcome back. The Daily Caller News Foundation and Judicial Watch have filed lawsuits against Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot over her new policy, which only grants minority reporters one-on-one interviews. A Daily Caller reporter says he reached out to Lightfoot's office but never heard back, even after several follow-ups. He says the mayor denied me an interview based on my race. The lawsuit asked the court to halt the mayor's plans to enforce her new race-based policy. It also is asking the court to declare her policy unconstitutional. Joining us now to talk more about this is conservative activist and attorney Rogan O'Hanley. You may know him as DC Drano, also senior contributor at The Federalist, Ben Weingarten, and Stacy on the right from SiriusXM. She's also the co-chair of Project 21, Stacy Wright. Good to have everybody with us.
Hey. Thanks for having us on, John.
All right. Now, Judicial Watch claims the policy violates the Constitution. Rogan, I mean, you could talk about the First Amendment. You could talk about the 14th Amendment. This is a pretty egregious and obvious violation of those amendments and more, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Well, the First Amendment protects freedom of the press, right? The government cannot infringe on those liberties. I don't necessarily think that's the strongest claim here. I think where it's mostly found is in the 14th Amendment, which protects against the unequal protection of the laws. Mayor Lightfoot, who in great irony believes that America is a racist country and was founded on racism, cannot enact racism as government policy. Democrats of old like to segregate reporters, I'm sure, based on the color of their skin in the Jim Crow era, and now they're doing it again. So the Daily Caller reporter has every right to be upset. What Mayor Lightfoot is doing is unconstitutional, and frankly, it's quite immoral.
Yeah, and Ben, I'm still kind of struck now. We've been talking about this for almost a week, and there's not more outrage from more of the media.
Yeah, well, the media is wholly invested, at least the corporate media is wholly invested in equity over equality, which the Biden administration, by the way, has infused the entire executive branch with an executive order pushing for equity. And what this exposes is that equity is not about treating people according to the content of their character, but explicitly on the basis of the color of their skin. And it says that justice is essentially discriminating against people on the basis of race. Nothing could be more un-American, nothing could be more detrimental to individuals of all races, colors, and creeds. And so it exposes the fact that so-called anti-racism and equity stems from so-called anti-racism is a racist policy in practice, and Americans should reject it.
Yeah, and the thing is Stacy, nobody's lowering the flags at half-staff because 11 people died in Chicago last weekend, like they did the shooting in San Jose. You're not going to hear Lori Lightfoot talk about that very often, and that's what this is really all about, right? So she can control the narrative, handpick her reporters that she wants to talk to, and control the message.
So I have a question for Lori Lightfoot, and you make excellent points there, John, as everyone here has, but what is the reason why she can't have a Black conservative reporter interview her then?
True.
If she's looking for diversity of color in the people who are interviewing her, why wouldn't she say, to prove the point, I'm going to give an interview to a conservative media outlet? That's not my normal routine as a Democrat, but I could certainly do that and make the point that we need more diversity in the people who are interviewing. But that's not even what's important. The questions that are asked by these reporters would not be different if the person who was asking them was Black. She's not being held accountable for all the people who die under her watch every weekend, the thousands of people who are shot every year in Chicago, and the number of children, numbering now in the tens of thousands, who don't have great educations this year because of her lockdown policies. So I would love to interview her. Lori Lightfoot, you're welcome on SiriusXM on my night program. I'll interview you on my podcast. I'll join John here. We could do a tag team.
Yeah, we'll do it here.
Woman, whatever configuration you would like. Join us so we can ask you some important questions about Black lives, because they do matter, and I'd like to hear you articulate your stance on preserving them.
All right, Stacy, we won't hold our breath, though. I don't think we'll put in a call to the office. I don't think, though. We'll give her next Friday. I mean, if anybody's listening, she can join us next Friday. Maybe she can join the meme team because we don't have time to do it this week. But let's also talk about President Biden's big trip to Cleveland yesterday. So many things to talk about, but the only thing the media really seemed to care about was his flavor of ice cream. Take a look.
Mr. President, what did you order?
Chocolate chip.
Oh, yeah. Chocolate chip. Everybody approved, Rogan, of the flavor. there. I think if we played the clip a little longer, he was going to joke about running them over with a car he wasn't driving again.
Well, the pillow fight journalism of the Obama era has returned. I'm just curious if they know what type of ice cream they're serving in these migrant detention centers at the border, which are overcrowded and loaded with thousands of kids being trafficked, what kind of ice cream they're serving at Home Depot, where lumber prices are sky high, what kind of ice cream they're serving at the gas station, where prices have gone up dramatically. So, this fawning journalism, people see through it. This is why President Trump was so popular, because he called them for what they are, fake news. This is just, again, more of that soft pillow treatment that we're unfortunately all too used to when a Democrat is in office.
Ben, I'm glad you're here, because I've seen you a couple of times on Newsmax on Wake Up America, and I like your dry sense of humor. But this is maybe one way they could have killed two birds with one stone with this question. Oh, chocolate chip, Mr. President. What kind of flavor ice cream did you have during your dessert? Based on that New York Post story, when you actually did meet at a restaurant with Hunter's Ukrainian, Russian, and Kazakhstani business associates, did you have the chocolate chip for dessert that night as well? Yeah, they could have a little more fun with this.
Yeah, or maybe some caviar paid for by one of the oligarchs who was sitting at the table. I mean, and of course, if this were Trump, this would be what kind of impeachable offense was committed? Why did he choose this ice cream place in particular? What ties does it have to the Trump Foundation, Trump organization? I mean, you can imagine all the ways that they would try to play
Logan
this out.
Act.
The Logan Act, exactly right. But the serious element of this is the hermetically sealed presidency. It was the hermetically sealed candidacy, and it's basically almost literally bread and circuses when it comes to coverage of Joe Biden, while in reality he puts forth, or at least his handlers put forth and execute, one of the most radical agendas in the history of the American presidency. And to your point, we could be talking about his dealings as vice president with Hunter Biden's Russian and Ukrainian and Kazakhstani associates. We could be talking about the disaster that's unfolding in the Middle East. We could be talking about, why did you scrap that State Department probe into the origins of the coronavirus? Oh, and now you just so happen to be standing up a new program with the intelligence community. None of the substantive stuff can matter to the press, because they need to keep running this diversion, essentially, while the agenda continues to be foisted on us. And
to your point, Ben, I mean, we do have a historical reference to go off of when it came to CNN's coverage of President Trump's ice cream habits. Remember this, guys, when they were so worked up because President Trump apparently got 2 scoops of ice cream and everybody else only got 1? I mean, that was a scandal. I mean, in my opinion, the president should get 2 scoops of ice cream, right? That's what he deserves. And just for the record, what's everyone's favorite flavor of ice cream here? Rogan, you got a flavor?
Cookie dough, hands down.
Oh, cookie dough is a good one. Stacy?
I prefer chocolate, but you stole my thunder there. I was going to say, remember when President Trump had 2 scoops of ice cream and it was the scandal of the century, until the next day when he was scandalous again, because everything he did, from breathing to holding his wife's hand to not holding it, to what he ate, the burgers, what he served people who came to the White House, how she decorated the White House, what color Christmas trees she used, the kinds of heels she wore, the kinds of boots she wore, the kinds of jackets she wore. Everything was a scandal. So he ate 2 scoops of chocolate ice cream, and everybody bowed down, and it's Friday. Yes. Welcome to America.
I like his choice of a waffle cone as well. And, chocolate chip or whatever it was is a great flavor. Ben, what are you going with when you go get your ice cream?
Too much coffee Oreo ice cream, unfortunately. But I will say the food stuff is no laughing matter. When the Japanese prime minister comes to the White House and they serve burgers, and it's Vice President Kamala Harris who's the one really running the show, that is a huge slap in the face. So there are geopolitical implications to food, actually, but not in this case of the scandal or lack thereof with respect to Joe Biden's favorite ice creams.
Yes, we can't forget either the George H.W. Bush incident in Japan, throwing up there, too. There are always geopolitical implications when it comes to diets and state dinners and important stuff. We got a couple minutes left. Real quickly, I want to talk about kind of the lack of self-awareness and the indignant we get kind of response we get from the media. One Washington Post reporter in particular, Emily Ruhala, had this message for internet dads out there. She says this: thanks to all the internet dads for the think pieces about how reporters ignored the lab story. Have been reporting on this for more than a year. She added, quote, I only want to hear from internet dads who are not fresh off their first Twitter thread about furin cleavage sites and or picked up the phone to report the story before this week. Ruhala also claims the link theory is possible but sees no conclusive evidence either way. As an internet dad, so to speak, Rogan, I found this, the hubris with these press corps folks is amazing sometimes.
They just don't want to admit that people like President Trump and Tucker Carlson were right. Tucker Carlson did a huge expose on this last year around this time. And, the leading theory at the time was that it was a bat. A bat caused it. But he noted how in Wuhan, there's not that type of bat for at least 900 miles. There's no type of bat colony. So, that plus the fact that, it's the only virology lab in the area that had this type of stuff. It clearly leaked out. You've got a communist dictatorship in power. They won't let anyone go in and investigate. How much more proof does this lady need?
Yeah, well, who knows? Probably a lot. Probably a lot more. Anyway, we were out of time, unfortunately. We've got a shortened panel this week. Great to see you, Stacy. Thanks for joining us. Ben, great to have you with us. And Rogan, always great to see you.
Thank you.
Coming up,
Appreciate
Bill
it.
Cosby has just been denied parole in Pennsylvania. We'll tell you specifically why and more. Your catch-up is next.